Let's go into the methodology. So if as a data scientist, yes, you have an idea of a broad range of tasks that a data scientist would do. So I want to say, okay, if I want to start analyzing a data, I'm part of a business, I want to analyze the data, what do I do? First of all, you want to understand the business. Business understanding is very key. What do they want? What questions? What's their pain point? What are they trying to answer? Then we go into analytical approach. So what approach? Now, if I understand the problem, and there are different approaches when you want to start doing analysis. So I want to ask where do I want to be? What do I want to start with? What do I want to do? So the business understanding will help you make that decision. Then if you understand, okay, the business problem, what I want to solve, oh, there's a decline in production. Okay, that's a question. So how do I approach that? Then you can ask, okay, what data do I need? Because everything about it is about data. So you need to get good data that kind of analyze, okay, that tells you, that leads you to the question. For example, if I want to, let's say, predict, let's say if I want to predict a housing price, for example, if I say I want to be able to predict if I am given, let's say, a house location. So if is it where is it in Lagos? Is it in Delta? Or if in Lagos, is it on the island? Is it on the mainland? Those are some factors that contribute to the price of the house. Is it a bed? Is it a one-room apartment? Is it a duplex? Is it a flat? How many rooms does it have? Does it have a swimming? So those are the kind of data that relates to what you need. But if you say you want to do, you want to do a project that analyzes, that you analyze housing price, and you're going to get maybe information about something that's not related. You have data, but it wouldn't really relate to what you're trying to solve. So you need the information. So you need to know what kind of data you need to answer that question. Then when you understand the data you need to collect the data. So in most of the times in data collection, in collecting data, you might also need to go back and refine. For example, I want to collect data for a particular project. I discovered that, yes, even though this is the right data I need to get, but it's not available. I can't get this data to answer this question. So you might need to go back and say, okay, do I refine the kind of data I need? Then when you get the data, you now have to understand what kind of data have I gotten, data preparation, then model. So let me just go into explaining them one by one. So the first one is defining the issue, right? Then what problem are you trying to solve? I've talked about that. Then you determine the approach. Okay, there are different approach you can. So how can I use the data to answer the question? So let me just talk about some data analytics kind of questions. So there are different processes and stages in data analysis, and so I'll put them in form of questions, some questions you want to ask. The first one is, and they are based on their value they provide and the complexity and difficulty. The basic is descriptive analysis. What has happened to the data? So for example, I put the first descriptive question, what is the current status? In that case, it's descriptive analysis. So if, for example, you want to see, you are a sales manager, you want to know what is the current status of our sales. So sometimes you just want to say, okay, what is the sales data? Just create a beautiful dashboard and generate report. Okay, this is how, for example, I have different stores. Okay, this store is selling XYZ amount of sale. This person is, so you just have that, okay, general view of what is doing, what's happening with your data, what has happened in production. Because, okay, let me see what's the production like for different worlds, what's the production like for different fields. That's just descriptive. So that's why if when you study, you can say, okay, do I want to go for a descriptive analysis? So based on the business question, do they just want to see what our sales is like? So that's where I come in, when the business question is very important. So they've employed you to come and do data analysis. Your first question is, what do you want? So understanding the business point, sometimes they just want, okay, I just want to see what we are doing. What's our sales like? What's production like? That's it. Then it could also be diagnostic. For example, they're having a problem. It's okay. They are bringing you as a data analyst or data scientist to come and see based on, we have, for example, we discovered that our sales have reduced. Come and help us understand why. In that case, you are going for a diagnostic, like a doctor trying to say, you come to the doctor and ask, oh, I have headache. The doctor will start asking you, okay, what kind of, are you having fever? How you sleep? So these are some questions you start asking to diagnose what the problem is. So in doing diagnostic analysis, you would also do descriptive analysis. That's why it's a step higher. Okay, what has happened in the day? What has happened? So by pointing out what has happened, then you can now see some you can now see some irregularity in your data, some things that are not following the trends. Then your question will be, okay, why did that happen? So in some cases, for example, why did sales decline in a quarter, for example, as a sales manager? So you want to start doing root cause analysis of the sales. So it's okay. So while I'm gathering the data, so if I want to do this kind of analysis, I want to gather a particular sales, like the product sales, what kind of customers buy XYZ products, what methods do they use, where do they prefer online shopping, do they prefer physical shopping, what product do they want. So I want to say, okay, did customer complain about a particular product? So for example, let's say in the last quarter sales dropped. I want to know, okay, why did sales drop in that quarter? First of all, I want to do my customer segmentation to say, okay, is there a reduction in customer? First of all, why are they not buy? Is there a different product they are going for? That maybe that's why they are not going for this product again. So you want to start doing your market analysis. Are there other competitions in the market? Are there other better competitions? Could it be maybe they will have competition at the same time they have better prices? It could be a quarter, maybe in that quarter there was a general a downturn in the economy. So maybe the product you are marketing or you're selling are very those high-end products. Okay, if you see that economy is dropping and people can no longer afford this product, maybe that's why it's dropping. So you need to understand why there is a drop in your sales. If it's your production, why is there a drop in production? So this is how you go about diagnostic analysis, trying to understand the why. Then the next thing you have to understand, okay, if I've understood the why, can I predict what will happen next? So, for example, I said, okay, last quarter there was a downturn in sales. What can we predict based on what we've seen for the next quarter? Would there be so that's why you have to understand what happened before. So you can now use that to predict, okay, for example, if there's a general economic downturn, is it going down? So is it going further down, or is maybe just going down and it's coming up? So if, for example, if you notice that it's going to go further down, do you expect further decline in your production? So those are some of the things you start predicting. So that's where you come about predictive analysis. So if I understand why it happened, so what's based on what I've understood, is it going to happen again? Doctor, in geology, they say the present is the key to the past. In data analysis, the past is the key to the future. So if you understand what has happened before, you can now say, okay, and what's happening currently, you can now use that to predict what's going to happen in the future. So for example, what's the forecast for our sales next year? So you can, and there's a lot of methods and there are a lot of processes or methodologies to do this different analysis. So that's why you have to understand what the question is. So depending on the question you want to answer, will determine the data you get, right? Then the last is prescriptive analysis. So if I understood that, okay, what has happened before? So what has happened, and for example, I predict that, okay, sales is going to further go down. As a business, so I cannot start prescribing. So if sales is going down based on the idea, because based on, okay, let's say there's a general economic downturn, do I want to reduce my price? So, but you have to also, so those are some questions you start asking. Do I want to do maybe some promotional offers? Let's say people that buy, if I get it, maybe just, okay, I'm giving it 50% discount. So those are some of the things that you can start thinking about to further help. Do I need to improve my marketing to reach more people? So those are some questions. So when you start looking at prescriptive analysis, you have gone through all the different stages, and you can now start recommending to business. That's where business recommendation comes in. So, okay, you can now at least go to the stakeholders, go to the management. So this is what I've seen, and this is what we can do to help us solve this problem. So now we talked about the analytics. So this first, we'll just talk about the business understanding and analytical approach. The next one is the data requirement. We'll talk about so what data do you need to answer that question? Where do I get my data from? How do I collect the data to represent the problems to be solved? And do I need, so the data preparation and transformation generally comes on transforming the data. So you've gotten the data, you've loaded it. So that's where data integration comes in. Then you have data preparation, you need to clean the data. In most cases, you could have, let's say, where numbers you have categorical values, they are stored in numeric columns. So those are some things you have to clean so you have uniformity in your data. The next part is you start doing your visualization, applying your visualization to answer the questions. Then you start training models. I talked about different modeling techniques before. So now, then you can now start making your prediction. You evaluate your model. Then you deploy the model. So when you have a good enough model that shows you the results you want, then you can now talk about deploying the model for use for production. In the jargon would be for production, deploying the model for production. Then after deploying the model, in most cases you also get feedback from the end users or from the people going to use the model. Is the model doing well? So that's why in this you see a lot of lines. For example, data requirement is a back and forth process. Most of these processes are iterative. You go back in loops. If you don't get the question, you can go back to refine your business, find the data. So for example, during your data preparation, if you discover that I don't have enough data or a lot of data are missing, maybe a very important data I need to analyze my data is I go back to data collection to collect more data. So it just goes iterative. Then modeling, in some cases you train your model is not good enough, you go back and maybe reprocess the data at least until you get something good enough. Then in some cases, after you go all the way to feedback. When you start getting feedback, you find out that okay, this model is not doing it's not performing optimal as much as I wanted to perform. You can go back and train your model again until you get a good result. For example, if you are predicting, let's say, somebody with cancer, for example, let's say you're in the health industry. If you predict somebody that has cancer, you predict that somebody will have cancer, and the person doesn't have cancer, and you start treating the person that's very detrimental. At the same time, you don't want to predict that somebody does not have cancer and the person has cancer. So the time the person is supposed to be training, the person wouldn't be training. The person will be treating the cancer. The person will feel like I don't have cancer. Then maybe when they discover it will be too late. So you want to get the right prediction at all time.